Good morning, beautiful souls. Happy Friday. It's Friday Ascension Update with Tim Wild. Sat in the woods. Just got a little band of rain moving over, which is very welcome this morning. We've had a little bit of kind of the heat returning, but not quite the heat that Europe is experiencing at the moment. And today's Ascension report is looking very much at being the other side of the Lion's Gate. And everyone can kind of like feel that almost that breathing out, that exhalation of intensity that we always experience when the sun kind of initially moves into Leo, peaks on the 8th of August, and then we experience kind of what's regarded as a shadow phase. Well, the shadow phase was much shorter this year. Very much like Mercury retrograde has a shadow phase afterwards, once the Lion's Gate closes, which I believe it did this year on the 12th. Usually I find or experience it kind of wrapping up or shutting down around the 18th, but this year it was much earlier. It was short and sharp, intense. Lots of work was done and a lot was achieved. And then we're into the integration phase. Well, the integration phase, is where we are at the moment. And I just want to kind of look and reflect at what it is going to be that we are handed or gifted to begin the next phase of our ascension process, because I do feel on a structural level that we have got a very different energy to work with. And kind of almost the parameters of our mission, the things that we are applying ourselves to, are now becoming a lot more refined, a lot more different. Now, I'll try and explain this a little bit, because for my ascension process, I've worked very hard. I've reached high. I've been wanting to get as much light into my body, to achieve as much, to open my chakras early so I can experience what it is that I used to have. And that served me very well, because it's brought back the memories, it's brought back the aspects of my master lifetimes that I need. But in another way, it's also created a habit where I continuously push. But this has been the theme of our ascension process, and Lavisa Altorn and I were talking about this last night in our Closing the Lion's Gate event. Without that drive, without that huge quantity of light coming into the planet, without that push vibration, we wouldn't have achieved what we've achieved structurally. And it's almost, when you get used to pushing, when you get used to forging forwards, it becomes habitual. It almost becomes a form of addiction if you're not pushing, if you're not striving, if maybe you're not struggling, then you don't feel like you're doing enough. And that immediately pertains to whatever you have within the shadow realms of yourself, within your relationship with your inner child, all of those inner workings. Now, the inner workings are things that we've been kind of maybe overlooking a little bit, because we've been so focused on the outside picture. Now we've walked into the second half of this shift from 3D to 5D. And although we can't look 6 months into the future with any kind of clarity or accuracy and say this is going to happen, our next phase is going to be very much defined by how we relate to ourselves. Okay? So all of this exciting stuff going on the planet, and by exciting I mean, you can look at it from many different perspectives. The 3D matrix and the people that are seeking power within the 3D matrix have become very visible. Their agenda is literally written in extremely clear language about what they want to achieve, about what they wish to do to food supplies, travel, our personal sense of freedom. And it's been written in a way that is cunningly aligned with the actual target formations that are held within the fifth dimensional matrix, the Atlantean Ascension gold print. So on a 3D level, you can pretend to be aligned with oneness, to be caring, to have the greater picture of the planet and individual souls at heart, when in actual fact the entire thing is completely visibly about social control, about containing and retaining power. Now, that is the polar opposite of what we are achieving, or what we are going to achieve, with the fifth dimensional vibration that we're bringing in. But on this other side of the Lion's Gate, there's something which has become really apparent. Okay, now the outside world collectively will always be a reflection of our inner. What we experience going on around us will always be a individual creation and also a collective creation. So at the moment, it's turmoil. We're halfway through the shift. Many of us have found that point of inner peace where we are so disconnected now from the goings on. We are aware of them. We can see them occurring. We assist by anchoring the light, working from the heart, setting our manifestation vision board at a very high, like we're aiming high with our targets. We know what we want. But I feel in some ways, and this doesn't just apply to me, this applies to everybody. Now we've done the structural bulk of getting the light anchored in. And now we have the assistants around us, the builders, the structural engineers, and the souls that are stepping in from the light to help us actually work this construction, this miracle, this fifth dimensional matrix that we're building. We've got to take a little bit of a step back and actually work upon our relationship with ourselves. So some of you might have already noticed this theme, this vibration that's coming in, where all of a sudden it's time to step back. It's time to take a little bit of, rest and recuperation, TLC. Now, we've had to do this, or we've learned to do this many times. I've spoken about it before. When you get to a point where you are a little bit frazzled and you've just got to retreat, you can no longer cope with energies from other people, problems, issues, situations, things that are being presented to you. And the only cure for that is maybe some time alone, grounding, spending hours in nature, doing what makes your heart sing. But this is only, it seems to have been like a short fix. It's like retreat, have a little bit of time, recuperate, regenerate, and then get thrown back into the mix again. And so the pattern repeats itself. So what I'm seeing very clearly from the energies of this very high frequency template that we're working with, that we're stepping into, is that needs to become a lifestyle, not a breaking point, not a fire break. Okay, so the work that we did at the intensity that we did it was very necessary. We needed to get all of this light anchored in. We needed to make the changes. We needed to make the fundamental push as the navel chakra wakes up, the heart's open around the world, and all of this energy and change takes place. I realised how much the world had changed. I think it was earlier on this morning, actually. I was up having a cup of coffee and just flicking through YouTube, and an old documentary flipped up. Now, back in the 80s, in my teens, I was a racing cyclist, and I'd avidly follow the Tour de France. And in 1985 or 1984, 1985 were kind of like the year that I started following it. And I was watching a documentary on a Glaswegian racing cyclist called Robert Miller, who's now transitioned into Philippa York. But back in 1984, all of the hopes and the dreams of kind of the United Kingdom were on this incredibly this incredibly gifted bike rider, mountain climber, Robert Miller. And I was just watching this bizarre setup where people would come from foreign countries to race in France, and it would be like the Foreign Legion back in those days. They'd like kind of leave with the stick and the bag like over their shoulders, like Dick Whittington, never to see their family and friends for like months at a time, simply because the level of communication, we had no internet. Dialing abroad and phones were incredibly expensive. Once you committed moving to another country, speaking a foreign language, you might as well have gone to Venus. And that's change. The quantity of that change has happened in 35 years. Now, if I can look at that, with all the reminiscing and all of the childhood or teenage memories, and actually think and feel that was just another universe, how are we going to be feeling or looking back at this period now in 10, 20, 30, 35 years' time? The world is going to change unrecognisably again. We are going to be shifting with this. Those of you that have incarnated during this window of time, 1984, we had no idea about why we were here. Or if we did, it was only kind of a vague inkling, or we're just kind of following our consciousness and being interested in the things that were available. Now we've got this incredibly close network of global communication where we are all connected with each other. We can connect with a soul in Australia or a soul in China or anywhere around the world at the touch of a button. You'll be watching this in another country, or I'm in the UK, in the south of UK. And this has just evolved incredibly. Now, a lot of us are wondering, how are we going to reclaim these Atlantean methods of healing? How are we going to utilise or harness new ways of using power on the planet? How are we going to actually see the structures of, say, politics and governments? How are they going to be in 10 years' time or 20 years' time? Nobody knows at the moment, because we're working from our hearts to create a new template. And at this particular moment in time, we're being called to focus upon the inner stuff, okay? Now, this is where it gets complicated, because our relationships with ourselves are complicated, okay? And the definition of self-love or unconditional love has to be higher than it is at the moment. This reflects into every single relationship that we have on a physical, mental and emotional, spiritual and a spiritual level. Once we have healed internally, the picture that we see reflected into the outside world around us will be complete. It will change. Obviously, this doesn't happen overnight. Okay, a lot of us are kind of what is known as wounded healers, and we've come this particular phase of our pathway is concentrated on honouring those wounds, moving through this particular process. But according to the various sources of information that I've received and other people have received, that incredible barrage, that super intensity of anchoring light in and clearing the bulk of the shadows that exist on this planet are now over, and we're moving into the phase where we begin construction. Now, construction begins with you. It begins with me. And if at this moment we're still pushing, we're still striving, we're not listening to ourselves, we're not applying the self-love to ourselves that we are, say, maybe giving the advice to other people to do, that is not in alignment. So when the Lemurians moved out of Telos over the Lion's Gate, they came with a powerful message. They came with a message that said, step back, give yourself the self-love, use the tools that you have available or that will become available to you to really work upon the inner child, the self-love, that projection of, say, criticism or intensity that you place upon yourself that then reflects into the outside world. Because at the moment, a lot of us are still very much tied into that 3D picture, the one that was painted as we entered that incredibly intensive universe, 3D universe, as we were born into it. I see a lot of people posting on, or making jokes or memes about how, like, oh God, I'm not coming back here again. Like, you know, the one last time, okay, I'll incarnate, and then you walk through the gateway and you're born into the 3D reality. The trick is with this is not to be wanting to get off this experience, not be wanting for it to be over, but to love wholeheartedly everything about yourself in order for the appreciation of the experience to begin to come through. Now that might sound very odd to those of us or those of you that have had an extremely challenging pathway. There's nothing, you know, you might feel that there is nothing to love. You've made agreement after agreement, soul contract after soul contract that has just literally taken you to the very brink of your existence. The time for healing is now, okay? Until we fix these experiences internally, the external picture is going to be one of flux. It's going to be one of conflict. It's going to be one of power in the wrong hands. At the moment, people are still looking for an external saviour. They're certainly looking for it in 3D as they hand their powers over to political institutions to do their work for them, to do their healing for them, to make their decisions for them, to manage their everyday lives. And the fifth dimensional energy calls for self-reliance, self-mastery, sovereignty, but most importantly, self-love. And the way we feel about ourselves is very evident in the way that we communicate with other people, what triggers us, what we respond to. And this it doesn't mean lying down and being a spiritual doormat, but it does mean functioning or responding or drawing the boundaries that you make from a point of love. Because at the moment, a lot of the time, if we do these things, they come from a point of ego. So we've got some refining to do. You might be listening to this and scratching your head and going, how am I going to do this? You know, like everything I do, you know, I've done so much work. I've strived so much to get to where I am now. And always, and this goes across the board, most of the time, the most simple methods are the most effective. Affirmations, actions of self-love, small steps in the correct direction. And most importantly, I think, actually consciously, actively working with that wounded inner child, that inner aspect. And I don't think there's any of us that can quite turn around and safely say, hey, I've done all the work. You know, if somebody turns around to you and says, I've done my work, I'm clean, I'm clear at this stage of the operation, you know, watch out for the next set of lessons to come in, because they will. So the Lemurians came with a message. They're going to start building, okay? They're building around us. They're going to be sending the vibration of their love through us in the work that we do. But they're also going to take over for a little while with the structural light anchoring as we work upon ourselves, so that we are in a position where we can hold that frequency, that fifth dimensional gold print within us, and actually align with it without any of the wounding that we've had over the past 10,000, maybe longer years, kicking into play and distorting the picture. There must be no distortions. This is what the diamond energy is about. This is what the crystalline light body, the movement from carbon to crystalline, the metaphor is all about. I mean, maybe one day we will have a completely different physical structure, but the actual description of it at the moment means diamond clarity, diamond energy, crystal clear intentions, crystal clear heart vibrations. And although on many occasions we might think we're crystal clear, there's still work to do. So we're being asked to just set back, reassess what we're doing at the moment, how we relate to ourselves, how we love ourselves, and move this self-love, this work that we're going to be doing upon ourselves, into this new field, this new reality. Because, like I said, the construction work is just beginning. It is just beginning to reach the point where the foundations have been laid, okay? We've got this beautiful golden Earth Merkaba around the planet, which is holding the light. We've got the united teams of light, the Lemurians and all of the other souls beginning to work upon this higher matrix, this kind of compound or structure of energy that we're going to be living within. But everything needs to be clear. Everything needs to be absolutely on point. And if this dialogue is triggering within you, oh my God, how am I going to achieve this? I've got so much work to do. That's the first key. Step back. Just allow the energy to flow. Once you've put your heart in charge of your process, you'll be very guided with what you want to do or what you need to do. Things that appeared very important to you previously will no longer have that pull to you. You won't make agreements that do not resonate with your soul or do not serve you. You will not add your energy to groups or to people that drain your energy, especially if they're taking from you with no return. All of these situations you will already be experiencing, so all you have to do is just allow yourself to fall into the flow. Fall into the flow and make it a priority and a target to work with the self-love, the inner child. And as this occurs, as we become softer, as we become more heart-based, the entire universe around us will shift to match that reflection. But it has to be a collective journey. Individuals can change the world, but they only have so much emphasis on the collective sphere of reality. So we've got work to do, and it's going to be of a very different vibration to the one that we're used to. And that, my lovely souls, is my Friday Ascension update. Sending you all loads of love, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.